I'm making a video game. We are deep into development of Reiterate, my first Steam release, and we're at a point where things are getting a bit muddled and messy. People are confused. I'm confused. Everybody's confused. Now, believe it or not, I watch anime occasionally, and it's a standard practice in a lot of long-running series to have a kind of catch-up refresher summary episode halfway through a run, so that everybody's on the same page. And that's what we're doing today. I put out a community post asking for questions you might need answering about the game, which I regret because you all asked me lots of questions and now I have to answer them, which is sort of the point, but means I have to actually do work now. If I don't get to your question, I apologise. If you put it in the comments, maybe I can reply there instead. So, let's talk game design. Before we begin, I should point out that you're not going to be looking at a lot of footage of Reiterate, because I imagine it'd get old looking at the same 90 seconds of gameplay looping in the background. So instead, you'll be watching footage of random games I've been playing lately because I'm too lazy to record anything relevant, and it has nothing to do with anything, but at least it'll look nice. Right, let's get on with it. A lot of you have reasonably asked me what makes Reiterate stand out in the field of 2D platformers. It's something I'm used to hearing, and I thought I'd commit an actual reply and official stance to video, so I can just point people back here the next 50 times it comes up. What is special about Reiterate? Absolutely nothing. There are no gimmicks, no unique selling points, no massive innovations, and nothing particularly stand out about any of it whatsoever, other than the fact that I'm the one making it. Please let me explain. Back at the very start of all this, I mentioned a couple of games, N++ and Kuso. N++ is a fully featured 2D platformer with a level editor, online leaderboards, custom colour theming, and has been around in some form or another since a Flash game in 2005, which means it's been reiterated for about 10 years by the time the current version came out. It's a very basic game in which your physics and movement are part of the challenge. It looks simple and clean, has no plot at all, and it melds random mechanics together at will on a whim. It's brilliant, and you should go and play it if you like 2D platformers. Kuso is the sequel to a game called Love, and the reason I don't talk about Love much is that Kuso has all of the levels of Love in it, in addition to some new ones, which means Kuso is the end product of reiterating on Love. Kuso is a simple, clean 2D platformer with no real gimmicks in which you do some platforming, and that's about it. That's the game. Reiterate is a 2D platformer with a simple and clean aesthetic that focuses on the flow of the player, getting from point A to point B, with a pretty bare bones set of features that need to be mastered in order to perform optimally, through a series of sequential levels that are designed around that intention. It doesn't have anything you might call a gimmick or a unique selling point. It's just hopefully a good 2D platformer that I'm going to release on Steam. There are a couple of reasons why I think that's okay. For a start, and I don't mean to throw any shade, but it's probably unavoidable, just being good and thoughtfully made is going to set it apart from a lot of games that are released on Steam. I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but the barrier of entry to Steam is now so low that there's a pretty sizable glompy iceberg of cooking fat that makes up a lot of its library. Reiterate, by virtue of being hopefully thoughtfully designed with the philosophies that I try and outline in this devlog series, will hopefully at least be better than those. Secondly, gimmicks and USPs aren't really as important as you think they are, and I do worry that things like the gaming press, influencers and PR marketing has led some people to believe that everything needs to be innovative in some meaningful fashion in order to be worthwhile, and I just don't think that's true. Let's look at Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight's unique selling points are things like being a faithfully recreated 8-bit NES aesthetic, where the developers made certain choices of which NES features to keep and which to scrap in order to make a modern game. It also has the overworld layout from Super Mario Bros. 3 and, I guess, some kind of rudimentary plot. But the unique gameplay gimmick is the pogo mechanic that it took from DuckTales. Now, if the argument goes that a game needs a standout feature to be good, then the implication is that Shovel Knight, if it didn't have any of those, wouldn't be good. And that's just not true. Shovel Knight would always have been a great game with brilliant level design and a thumping soundtrack, whether it had that pogo mechanic or not. Some of you asked what reason is there to buy Reiterate over, for example, Celeste or Super Meat Boy, and the answer is, there isn't one. I understand if you don't, and I don't blame you. I'm not aiming for people who are trying to decide between Celeste and Reiterate. What I'm aiming for is people who've already played Celeste and think, yeah, I enjoy 2D platformers with an emphasis on movement and challenge. This is another one of those. I may purchase it. And why am I aiming for those people? Because I'm those people. I like 2D platformers, always have, and it just made sense to me that my first Steam release ever should be one. But I didn't want to reinvent the wheel, I just wanted to make a good solid 2D platformer that if I bought it I would enjoy. And that's Reiterate. I do truly hope that's enough for you, but I absolutely understand if it's not, and I'm not going to be mad at you if you decide it's not a game for you. Given everything that I've just said, I thought now might be a good time to talk about price. At launch, day one, Reiterate will cost £4.99 in Great British pounds. I don't know yet how that translates to your local currency, but I will try and keep it consistent. I based this on the content at launch. 60 levels means less than 10p a level, plus the plot and the speedrun mode on top, so I think that's pretty fair. There will also be a launch discount, as is customary with this sort of thing. Speaking of launch, I got some questions about what's left to do before the game is done, so I thought we'd roll all of that in a section on its own. On day one, the game will have 60 total levels. There will be 50 levels in the main game in a fancy looking level select screen, and if you beat those 50 levels, you can officially consider the game complete. You have done it, well done. There will then be 10 challenge levels, which are unlocked by collecting optional decryption keys. These optional keys are placed on every 5th level, so they're evenly spread out over the 50 main levels. They are again optional, and you don't need to do them, but they will be very, very hard. The same collectible you need for those challenge levels will also unlock sections of the plot, which is included separately from the main game in its own little section, and is presented in a series of written transcripts from someone's devlog. Oh, I had a question about whether there'd be Easter eggs or inside jokes, and there will. I bring it up now because the one I feel comfortable telling you about is that each in-game devlog that tells the story has a date that corresponds to the real-world dates that I've released devlog videos for Reiterate. Aren't I so clever? Once you've beaten the 50 main levels, you'll unlock Speedrun Mode, which I'll get to in a minute. That is, in summary, all of the content on day one. 60 levels, a plot, and a speedrun mode. Now let's talk about once the game is out, I will start on a couple of updates. Inevitably there will be bugs. There's always bugs and I'll need to patch out those bugs, so I'll be fixing bugs. What I'll also be doing though is working on 60 more levels. Don't get excited, I'm not remaking the entire game all over again. These extra 60 levels will be remixes of the levels that already exist, and you'll unlock them simply by beating the original level in the main game. Think of the Dark World in Super Meat Boy, or the B and C sides in Celeste. The same levels made harder, and in keeping with that, because it's me that's making them, they will be known as Z sides. And yes, I know I normally pronounce it Z because I'm English, but it's a bit like Dragon Ball Z, innit? Sometimes you just have to go with what sounds right. These Z sides will be an entirely free update some point later. There's no paid DLC planned for Reiterate at all, because if I'm being honest with you, any content I'd feel comfortable charging for might as well just be a sequel instead. Some of you have also asked about a level editor, and my official stance on that is, I'll look into it. If I can figure out how to make one, I will put it in after launch and it'll be free. But please don't get your hopes up. The reason I'm making this in Construct 3 is because I know zero things about code, so if it requires even a minimal amount of extra programming somewhere, it probably won't happen. But I will look into it, I promise. What I'll also be doing is checking in with the fan base to see what they want, and if it's something I can do relatively simply, I'll be updating the game based on feedback after launch. I imagine most of that is going to come from speedrunners, so we'd better talk about had a few questions about speedrun mode, which I'm very happy to answer. Speedrun mode will be levels 1 to 50, back to back, one after the other. As I talk about this, I might be using terms that only make sense if you're a speedrunner, I don't know. There is only one official category at launch, and it's the level 1 to level 50 run through, which I guess you might call main percent. After launch, depending on what people want, I might include official alternative options to record times for challenge percent, which I imagine will be the main game including the optional challenge levels, and then Z percent, which will probably be, when the update is done, all of the main levels, all of the challenge levels, and all of the Z-side levels. The speedrun community can, and I imagine will, create their own categories, but these will be the ones with official speedrun mode support with speedrun mode features. The way speedrun mode will work is once you select start run, or whatever the option ends up being, you'll be at the start of level 1. Now what I want to do there is have an official start point where I might even use my own voice and actually audibly say start or go or something. Then the timer starts, you do the level, get to the goal. In the main game, when you reach the goal, you get a menu asking if you want to go to the next level, the level select screen, the main menu, whatever. Speedrun mode doesn't have that, it just jumps to the next level. You also can't pause in speedrun mode. My reasoning for this is that I think if you have to pause in a run of a game like Reiterate, which I imagine will have runs under half an hour, you might as well restart. So instead the pause button will just immediately restart your run. The game's accessibility features, which I've named Ghost Mode, are also disabled in speedrun mode. Because if you're speedrunning the game, I don't think you need any assistance, and I don't want you accidentally activating it and screwing up your run. Finally, when you get to the end of level 50 and hit the goal, you'll get an audible and visual acknowledgement that the run is complete. Probably me yelling the word time. This is based on me watching Games Done Quick events and hoping one day Reiterate might end up at one. I wanted to put in a clearly defined point where you can start and stop the timer if ever you take Reiterate to a GDQ. The game will track your personal best, as well as your last 3 run attempts. And that's it for now. It'll be easier to show you once I've done it, but hopefully you can kind of picture what I'm going for. Right, we need to talk about... A lot of the questions centred around the plot of the game, which I've only really mentioned once and did a pretty terrible job of explaining, so let's sort that out. I'm going to try and give you the basic premise without any spoilers that will make you not want to check out the plot when the game's done. The same optional collectibles that unlock the challenge levels will also unlock a series of written devlogs in a separate story menu. These devlogs will be written from the perspective of someone who is trying to create a robot, for reasons that will become clear later. The robot keeps getting destroyed a lot during testing, but every time it does, its machine learning algorithm is backed up to the main server and then uploaded into a new body, so that in theory it's always learning and getting better. It is being reiterated. This is consciously written as a parallel for you the player, by the way, because it's what you'll be doing too, because I'm just so clever. Now the plot is not just about making a robot, because you'll need to know why this guy is trying to make a robot at all, and how that ends up going. So I don't think I've spoiled too much, but hopefully that gives you some idea of the tone and purpose of the plot. It's technically separate from the game and it's entirely optional, but I think it's something that if you're interested will really enhance your overall experience. I had a question about the main character's name, and I don't mind filling that one in because the story behind it is sort of fun. Originally the little robot dude you will be playing as was named Nemo. Nemo is Latin for no one, or nameless, and it was inspired by Captain Nemo in Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, as well as a song by the band Nightwish. The idea was that the robot and the creator had some thematic ties to Captain Nemo in the lyrics from that song that I can't go into because it will give too much away. You can probably already see the problem with this. That damned fish. It occurred to me eventually that I couldn't try and build a mythos and backstory and interesting characterization behind a character who, when I present them to people, would be met with the response, "Oh, like the Disney movie." I just couldn't do it. It would have driven me mad. So thanks Disney for ruining that. Thankfully, I am surrounded by brilliantly creative people, and my girlfriend gave me an alternative. And so I can now reveal in a worldwide exclusive that the player character in Reiterate will be called Deus. Deus is Latin, again, because if you make something Latin it sounds fancy, and it means god or godlike, to where we get the word deity. You'll most likely know it from the phrase Deus Ex Machina, which literally means God from the machine, and is a Greek theatrical term for when an actual god would literally come down from the sky and fix everything. The actual meaning has nothing to do with Reiterate at all, but I like the connotations of the phrase God from the machine, since it fits the plot of the game, and I think it's short and unique enough to just be a good, solid protagonist name. And now that's a thing that you know. And now I'm going to answer a bunch of questions that aren't related to any particular thing, just so I can say I've answered a lot of questions. If I don't get to your question, it's because of one of two reasons. It's because I either can't right now, or I'm planning to in a proper devlog sometime in the future, but feel free to post it in the comments below and I will reply if I'm able to. How long do you estimate the time to play through it? I don't know. Depends how good you are at platformers. Probably between 2 to 3 hours, maybe. Are you going to add bosses in Reiterate? No. When are you going to add ray tracing to Reiterate? It's in already, you just need to watch the devlogs on an RTX 3090 to be able to see it. Do you think you'll ever change how the character of Reiterate moves? No. It took me hours to get it to where it is and it's staying there now. Do you think the Steam release will be soon? No. On the topic of release dates, I'm aiming, I think, for August of this year, because what I'd really like is for it to coincide with the 1-year anniversary of the channel, but we'll see. Are you considering to add trading cards for its Steam release? I hope so. How are you? Stressed but holding it together. Thank you for asking. You ever plan to switch from visual scripting to a programming language? If I get Reiterate out and have enough residual income to the point that I can just take 6 months off from having a normal job, then yes, I will learn to code. But until that happens, no. Can the character's trail be shaped as him, please? I'll give it a go. Maybe not at launch, but I'll try it out. Who's your favourite Pokemon? Bulbasaur. Will you make a sequel? Probably. The jump seems very floaty. Are you designing around it? Yes. Reiterate is ugly. That's not a question, but thank you. And that's all we've got time for, I think. Hopefully I've set a few things straight and everybody knows where we stand now and what to expect from the game. I'm trying to manage expectations because I'd rather not become the CD Projekt Red of the YouTube game dev indie world. Like the video if you liked the video you just liked, and subscribe for more videos like the one you just liked when you liked it. And I'll see you the next time I'm thinking, hey, let's talk game design.